bit of an overtime program today on the Public Square. Many of you know that Rob Walgate had a chance to interview former Oberlin women's lacrosse coach Kim Russell, who was recently removed of her coaching duties because of her stand for biological women in women's sports. We produced an hour-long program dedicated to that discussion. If you missed it, it's available now at thepublicsquare.com and our free mobile app. You know, look for the lamppost logo. But in producing a show like that, there are unfortunately pieces that end up on the cutting room floor. For today's brief visit, we're bringing you some of those clips. It makes for a wide-ranging discussion about Kim's coaching career, the mental health issues that she sees in young people, and how it intersects one of the most sensitive cultural debates of our time. Here's Rob and Kim.
Well, let's talk about Coach Russell. Before it was Coach Russell, it was the player Kim Russell, right? Division I athlete, played lacrosse, William and Mary.
Yep.
Did you envision yourself getting into coaching when you were the player?
No. So that was, my maiden name was McGinnis when I was there. And actually a joke, my sister asked me when I graduated, do you see yourself coaching? I'm like, oh, no. I had planned to be this, big wig businesswoman. My first opportunity from being an athlete and because of Title IX and what I got to do because of that was I was a business major, and one of my classes, everyone you didn't have to. The idea was get to know as many people in the class, as much about each person, and whoever learns the most about the most people in class gets a free dinner. Well, when you're in college, a free dinner that's not at a dining hall is huge. And also within that class, we read the book, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, which was written by Mark McCormick. And Mark McCormick was the CEO of International Management Group, which at the time was the biggest sports management company in the world. He was a William and Mary grad.
Okay.
He came down to William and Mary frequently and played tennis with, back in the day, we had women's athletics directors separate from the men's, and he would play tennis with Millie West, the women's athletic director. I was reading the book on a road trip for lacrosse, and Feffy, our lacrosse coach, says, he comes down here all the time. If you want to meet him, talk to Millie. So that's what I did. That summer, we were going to England to play field hockey. And when I met with him, he offered me and coincidentally my best friend internships at Wimbledon. Best job I've ever had.
Not a bad place to intern.
Right. And at that time, not only did IMG manage the most professional golfers, the most professional tennis players, they also owned the television rights to most major events. They owned the merchandising rights at those events. And so it was a glorified retail job for 2 weeks. That was a blast. So we were the only two Americans working, made friends, the best of friends with two Scottish guys who were working, and then, friends with a lot of the others. And we had no money left because we had been traveling around Europe for 3 weeks. And so the four of us, one would go and get, for £1, 6 hot little donuts in the morning. And then I think we ate Baskin-Robbins in the afternoons. But
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, it was fabulous. Because we were the most athletic looking, we got to dress in the tennis warm-ups, and we had the same badges as the tennis players, so people thought we were professional tennis players and would clap as we went by. And we got to actually, during our breaks, go and sit at center court and watch the best tennis in the world.
So cool. And this is early 90s?
88.
88,
yes.
Okay. Very
that was
cool.
in 1988.
Very cool.
I wrote to McCormick and said, I'd really love a real job with your company. And that's actually how I moved to Cleveland. I knew nobody here.
The headquarters were...
Yep. East 9th and St. Clair.
Yes.
Moved here knowing no one. My interview for the job was at Curtis Strange's house for dinner because he lived in Williamsburg and he had just won the U.S. Open.
Yes.
I apparently did well. I wasn't starstruck because I didn't think golf was a real sport. You don't have to run. And I was offered a job in the golf.
I'm glad you
division.
didn't say that in the IMG interview, though, because looking at their history with golf through the years,
Right?
their clientele, the best of the best. So,
Yeah.
well, that's very cool. So you end up in Northeast Ohio. You end up in Cleveland.
Yep.
And you never envisioned being a collegiate
I didn't envision being a coach.
at all?
At all, or a teacher. And that has really been my calling and my passion. So a few years after that, I worked for IMG for about 3 years, moved with them to Boston, loved what I got to do in Boston with them. And while I was in Boston, my boyfriend at the time asked me to marry him. I moved back to Cleveland, got married, had started having babies right away. And when my daughter Maddie, I became a stay-at-home mom intentionally, but I still taught step aerobics and things. And that's when I would get a babysitter. And my babysitter was late one night, and she said, I'm so sorry, I'm late. I said, it's okay, what's going on? She goes, oh my gosh, we're starting a lacrosse team at Mags, and we had a meeting tonight. And I said, oh my gosh, who's going to be your coach? She said, we don't know yet. I said, why didn't you ask me? She said, I thought you played field hockey. I said, I did, but I also played lacrosse. So that was my entrance to coaching.
And for those listening around the country, Mags is Rocky River Magnificat, an all-girls school in
Correct.
Cleveland, Ohio, Rocky River, Ohio. That is a very prestigious school, well-known school, and that's a great story on how they found their first lacrosse coach.
Yeah.
And then this moved you on to eventually you coached at the collegiate level.
Correct. So I coached at Magnificat through 2003, but 2000, right after the 2000 season, so when I started, I had one 15-month-old. The next spring, I was pregnant with my second and had him at the end of the season. The moms were all worried because I was running around 5 centimeters dilated, and everybody was afraid I was going to have the baby on the field. So
you're an athlete and a coach. What better place to have a baby?
Exactly.
I mean,
so I would be nursing one, have another on my back, and then my third was born in 1999. And when my oldest, Maddie, was going to start school and be in school till 3 p.m., I didn't want to be gone from 3 to 6 or later.
yeah.
That negated the whole purpose of me being at home with my kids.
Yeah.
So that's when I started teaching PE at Roughing Montessori. Everything happens organically, and I became the PE teacher there and was there for quite some time as well.
Very cool.
And just like I said I would never coach, I also said I would never drive a red minivan or any red car or any minivan. I also said I would never coach college, and guess what?
Yeah.
All of those things
Now, where
happened.
did your college coaching career start? Was it Baldwin Wallace?
It was.
Baldwin Wallace. All right. As the lacrosse coach?
As the lacrosse coach.
Okay.
So 3 of my friends sent me the job app. You have to do
description.
this. You have
Yes,
to do
yes.
this. And I was like, oh no. They were starting a program from scratch, and I was a serial starter of teams. I had started Magnificats. I had started Rocky River youth programs in 2003, which we had open to anyone because there were no programs
Right,
on the west
yeah.
side of Cleveland. I had helped start a club team, Ohio Premier, which was the first one in Ohio that a few other coaches from the east side had started, and I joined them. And then, yes, so Baldwin Wallace did not have a team. I had not interviewed for a job in probably 20 years. And everybody said, oh, this is perfect. My first interview was a 20-minute phone interview where I knew 6 people were sitting around a table on the other side. And all I thought was, oh my gosh, they're just sitting laughing at me with every question. But my brother had prepped me. My brother is a professor at Cortland in New York, and he's a pole vaulting coach and actually the U.S. expert on pole vaulting, U.S. scientist. He probably has more data on pole vaulting than anyone in the world, just fun fact. So when he found out I was interviewing, he's like, I can prep you. Here's what, because he's on a lot of committees.
Yeah.
This is what they're going to ask. This is what you should ask them. So I was feeling really, really good about myself. And then one of the professors who was on the search committee is a religion professor who became an incredible mentor of mine. He was also the faculty advisor to the NCAA for Baldwin Wallace.
Okay.
He has since retired. So I feel like I'm doing really well with these questions. And then he said, "So what are you afraid of?" And my whole body froze. It was just like, I sure as heck am not going to tell you, is what went through my head.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I ended up coming up with because everything in me froze at that moment. And I was actually going through a divorce at that point. And so the safety and health and well-being of my children was what I was most afraid of. And I think still as a mother, that's what you're always is the most important thing to you is your children. So,
well,
anyway.
Obviously you got the job.
Yes.
So you were the lacrosse coach at Baldwin Wallace for how many years?
I was there for 5 years.
5 years.
Yep, we started it. So the first season we played, we basically had a couple girls who had ever played the sport before. And then the rest we took out of the dorms. We had a softball catcher.
That's how it works sometimes starting it. That's how it works.
We convinced someone from admissions, this woman, Bridget Walsh, who had played softball, to be the goalie. Another athlete, Katie Johnson, who was, I think, a sophomore or junior at the time, who had played basketball and softball. Come on over. You'll be a great defender. A couple runners and swimmers. Come on in.
And for the most part, you can make athletes into players of each respective sport.
Absolutely.
I know you don't feel golf is an athletic sport. And you're probably right on that because it's the most difficult sport I've ever played in my life.
It is. Oh my gosh, technique.
Yes, yes, so much, and that's where video work has improved so much with golf and has helped so much. But anyway, so from Baldwin Wallace, you eventually ended up at Oberlin.
Yes. So in between, I left BW to take the job to start. I went back to IMG. So I went to IMG Academy in Florida. To start their girls program. I was only there for one semester.
You're all about starting things.
Yes. I'm a serial starter.
Yes.
So I left there. I did not plan to leave. I actually looked to interview with some places in hopes to get, maybe BW to pay me a little bit more money. D3 college coaches are, not making.
You have to love it.
Right.
And yes, you have to love it for sure.
So went down to Florida for one semester and then came back home and was not going to get back into college coaching. The then head coach at Oberlin reached out to me to ask me if I would. I said no. The athletic director reached out to me. I said no. She reached out to me again, said, "Would you at least talk about it?" And I said, "All right." And so I went in and met with a bunch of other coaches there and 2 current players, and they convinced me to get back into it.
And when you and I talked last week and we were trying to schedule the interview, you talked about you teach boxing to those with Parkinson's.
I do, yes. That is one of the most inspiring groups of people I've ever worked with. So there's a international program called Rock Steady that's based out of Indianapolis. And there's an amazing woman in Lakewood, Ohio, Maria Pajolis, who started one of the first Rock Steady gyms in the country when they first started. And her gym is called Rock It Out. And coaching and working with them is so inspiring to see, any group that you work with forms their own community, and community, team, belonging is so important. And these people range in age from, I think the youngest one might be in his 30s. And then there's at least one who's 84, who's one of my favorites. They're all fighting this battle. And the boxing is amazing because how it helps is both with HIIT workout, but using both hands, crossing over your body, right? And then I can add the breathing and lymphatic drainage and reflexive performance reset and the coaching and, give them a little more of a hard time sometimes. And
I love it. I love it. We can do it at any age.
And I think people also don't understand as as a college coach, what you see and what you know about the kids you coach is like being a parent to 20 or 30 extra kids. And what you learn when you work at the college level is the levels of anxiety and depression that are now rampant, and the amount of medications that kids are on now is through the roof. And I learned that not just from coaching, but I taught a class. I taught one called Techniques of Relaxation, and I taught another that I developed myself called Relaxation, Joy, and Flow, Thriving in a VUCA World. And the first year that I taught one of these, I realized that a lot of kids were on at least 3 medications, right? One for anti-anxiety, one for depression, and typically an ADHD med, not necessarily because they had that, but just to test take because of achievement oriented.
So we're going to pump our young people full of medicine. And we've seen
Correct.
this, pharmaceuticals, we've seen this happen over and over and over again.
Yes. So it's one of the reasons that I years ago started looking into all these different breathing. How do we feel better? How do we find more joy every single day when these stresses are coming at us? So the classes I teach, I also teach intuitively. They're never the same. We might dance and we might do breathing and tapping and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I would also have kids from the music conservatory, and Oberlin's Music Conservatory is one of the best in the world.
Yes.
So these performance musicians are basically professionals. And one of the kids in my class said, Kim, you know that most of the performance musicians here are on beta blockers to perform. And I lost it. I was like, what? Like old man medication? What are you talking about? Yeah. And that's when I realized, I knew that the levels of stress that these kids are feeling, and I think we've done a disservice, my generation of parents specifically, in the resiliency of our kids. And we stopped calling, as coaches, we stopped saying helicopter and changed it to snowplow or lawnmower because parents are pushing everything out of the way. So kids are not building resilience, and then they're being put on drugs very quickly for whatever. Anywhere.
It just seems like that's the solution everyone points to or goes to first, and I feel like that we have the order wrong.
Correct. Yeah. We can just change the way we breathe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, they say that you teach what you need to learn. And still one of the people closest in my life will say to me, are you breathing?
Yeah.
And so I am still in the midst of taking something called Oxygen Advantage Master Instructor Training. And that breath work that you do in that can be used for specifically really good performance training, but it also teaches you how many people are breathing incorrectly, not using their diaphragm.
Oh, okay.
And when you don't use your diaphragm, you're not healing your body as well as you could.
Okay.
And if you just breathe through your nose, you will start activating your diaphragm. So we weren't meant to breathe through
Alan,
our mouth.
if you hear me breathing through my nose right now, you know why. I'm just trying to activate my diaphragm. So
by breathing through your nose, it changes your biochemistry, the biomechanics, so many things, including it increases the nitric oxide in your body, which improves circulation, will improve recovery, and improve performance. My wish is for every human being on this planet to feel comfortable as who they are in the body that they were born in, and to celebrate that and to move it more. So the things that we can do differently to feel better, one is just to breathe. Another is to love each other more and do things to feel more joy, whether that's like play music and dance like you're a crazy person, or walk with a dog, or go out in nature barefoot and be in nature. And I think a lot of people aren't doing that enough. And we definitely don't have kids our schools don't even have PE except for a small amount of time. And instead we have kids sitting And literally all of your cheeks should be smiling, especially those down there. And most people's, those down there have amnesia and don't even know how to work because people sit so long. And then we're like this because of phones. And so not only is that bad for your overall physical health when you do this, but it closes your heart. I've seen and dealt with and been sitting next to multiple kids who have started suicidal action, multiple kids who are just so anxious, they just don't know what to do. And it's really heartbreaking to me. I look at all the kids who I've coached and taught over the years and, my own kids and my own daughter who, girls go through tomboy phases, right? And how many of those girls who are now, beautiful young women might have said, I want to be a boy. So one of the moms, I've spoken with 2 moms of kids who all of a sudden after COVID said they wanted to be another sex and what they've gone through. Do you know that in most states, kids can walk into a clinic, Planned Parenthood, other clinics, no medical background check, no endocrinologist on staff, and they can walk out with hormones. This is so heartbreaking to me. And the stories that these parents have told me, the one took her daughter to a psychologist. First thing was to affirm and gave her daughter a pamphlet with basically how to get gender reassignment surgery. First, after 45 minutes. 45 minutes. Again, what I think is happening the most is at that tender age between especially middle school and high school, I don't know many people who feel comfortable in their bodies. When you're going through puberty, when everything is changing, your mind is crazy, your body is crazy, you think you look ugly, you think you look different. Even the most, naturally, physically beautiful people do not like their bodies. And kids feel alone, and even more so alone after the lockdowns. So what is happening online and the groups they can find are very dangerous, I believe. Why would you pump your body full of hormones, number one, that it's not meant to have in it? You must be very sad. You must need to talk to somebody.
Well, that's what I talked to an educator that's been an educator for 25 years, and I talked to him about that subject. I said, what would have happened when you started teaching 25 years ago in the 90s if a young woman would have come to you and said, I'm a boy? He said, well, we would have sent her to a school psychologist. We would have had a lot of paperwork, a lot of meetings with parents, and we'd have talked to the young lady. I said, what happens today? He said, I'm scared to tell you, but it's encouraged.
Yeah, and they're not allowed to tell parents.
Right.
So even in California at a Catholic high school, they didn't tell the parents when a girl changed her name to a boy's name. When you talk to doctors and you understand that this is they are told that this is what they have to do. You have to basically affirm whatever the kid says. They're not given another way. It's not, how about we talk about this? How about we talk about what it is you're feeling? To do something that will tie them to the medical establishment for the rest of their life, that will mutilate their bodies. I believe it is this, these people want to feel the sense of belonging. You are not going to get it by mutilating your body.
Amen.
When you mess with the physiology of the human body, it is a life-changing decision. And what we are doing now is egregious to young children.
Yeah.
I still care about people and people's souls and their bodies. because again, why are we here? Like, how can we just bring more joy and let go of all of the crap, right? And really enjoy life and at the same time learn and be better.
Thanks to Rob Walgate and Kim Russell for a wonderful conversation today on The Public Square. And thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear it again, or hear the additional hour-long program that we did with Coach Kim Russell, visit us at thepublicsquare.com or download our free mobile app. We'll see you next time on The Public Square.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.